Coming up next on In the Box Seat podcast.
As a trainer in this country, and I'm not knocking anything in the industry because I love the game, I think trainers are on the back foot from the start. Theoretically, I think we should be paid 30 days up front, but paid up front. For that first month, you're going to feed that horse, you're going to pay the groom, you're going to pay the wages, you're going to pay the bedding, you're going to pay this. There's so many hidden costs when it comes to a trainer and running a yard and business that the average person's got no idea about.
Once that racing bug has bitten you, it's impossible to get rid of it. Near impossible to get rid of it. As I've said before, we've all got that same disease, that same sickness, African horse sickness. And the guest that we've got today might not be in the front line as he was, and as his father was, as his late father was, but he's certainly in the industry. You never can get rid of it. Today we're going to go back to the past and talk about the Denysschen dynasty. Lowan Denysschen is our guest today, his late father Paul. Lowan, how are you?
Good, thanks, Brian, and you?
Grumps?
Yeah, but what?
When's the next holiday? When's the next
Next
party?
month. Next month I'm on holiday again.
Have you ever known anyone to go on holiday like this, Oak?
I can only take one guess where he's going. It's got to be Kruger.
Kruger National Park. It's like Michelle Narek said to us the one day, he said, you told him you went fishing in the Kalahari. He said, he doesn't know how that happened.
Must have found the oasis.
Lowan, lovely to have you with us. And our podcasts, vary and different guests and just wonderful different spectrums. And today we're going to just learn about, I say the Denysschen dynasty because that's exactly what it was. I mean, your dad was a top horseman, a top trainer. You were a top horseman and a top trainer in your own right. You still are a top horseman, and although you might not be training, you certainly are still involved with these beautiful animals. But we'll get to that just now. Born and bred in Durban, but you weren't always in Durban.
No, we grew up in the Kloof Hillcrest area, in Bothas Hill as well. My father was a Durban boy, born and bred. He grew up in the Montclair, Clearwood area. So, as a youngster, you had the horse fraternity around you,
It's
training
amazing.
in Clearwood.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people come out from the Montclair area.
Absolutely. Laugh, a lot of guys.
Humby,
Shane
Yeah,
Humby.
yeah.
Humbles, how's all Humbles?
Spooks. I haven't spoken to him
I
for a
must
while.
actually give him a shout. He's a good man.
Yeah, he's a good man, Als Books.
Yeah, but that whole area, I mean, Gary Lemke, all those blokes, they all come from that
For sure.
Montclair.
So that's that grassroots. That's that grassroots. Like in Joburg, it's probably the Turffontein area.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to be
No
interrupted.
problem, no problem.
So born and bred in Montclair, Durban, and then Kloof Hillcrest. And then you ended up in Zimbabwe. How did you end up in Zimbabwe?
So I went schooling right away from primary school in Kloof to end of junior school, which was standard 5 as we knew it.
Yes.
And then we later shift up to boarding school in Pietermaritzburg.
Which school?
I spent most time at Maritzburg College.
Most time.
Yeah, I went there.
Where were the other times?
Well, I did my first year high school. I was boarding at St Charles, funny enough, because we were living in Bothas Hill. And back then, with the schooling rulings, that there was a zoning type of rule. You couldn't get into a high school. We lived right next to Kersney College, so that probably didn't work in our favour. So I didn't get into college. My brother was 1 year ahead of me. He was boarding at college 1 year ahead of me. But then that was 1990. I was in standard 6. And during that year, Dad was training, obviously, and how things go and ups and downs. He had to stop training and pulled out of the game for a short while, and we moved down to the Cape. And he ended up managing a wine farm in the Robertson area for a owner of his at the time, a gentleman by the name of Jack Rowley. Was an English guy.
Jack Rowley,
He was heavily involved in the mining up in Richards Bay area. He was friends with Brian Moore and all the Redmond and all that crap.
Redmond and Moore, yeah.
So he was managing the farm down there in the Robertson for about a year and a half. So I finished my year at St Charles, and then we shipped off down there. My brother and I went into Wynberg Boys. Only spent 2 terms there, so half a year. And then I think Dad's patience ran out with Jack Rowley on the farm because Jack was ended up spending so much time there, and he was bless him, he was a heavy drinker. So it wasn't a happy environment. You know? So Dad comes to us one day on a Sunday at school and says, "We're moving back to KZN. Now we've just done 2 terms there, we're just settling in, and now we're coming back to KZN. He's going to come back training again." Which, cut a long story, he did. When he came back to KZN, he actually joined Mike Miller. He approached Mike, and worked for him. Said, I'm going to work for you as your assistant for the next whatever time period.
Your dad stuck me out because I was doing interviews in those days, and I lined your dad up. I said, I want to get the camera and everything.
Paulie was old
He never
school.
pitched up.
Oh, okay, because he was probably trying to hide something. So he joined Mike. I think he was with him about a year and a half. And while he was there, he gathered together a handful of his old owners and previous horses. One of them was Deb's Delight. Remember Deb's Delight? And he slowly built up again. You know, his finance wasn't good. And while he was with Mike, they actually had a hell of a run together. I was then in Pakistan at 7 and 8. And my butcher and I, we were taking jackpots. We were winning every other week. I had a lot of money in my account. And I said, I'm serious. Just following what they would tell us, you know. So then it took him about a year and a half, and then he branched off on his own again. He was at the back here for a short while, at the Bates' old property, but then moved up to Ashburton. And that would have been in about 91 or 92.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's had some top horses. I mean, he's competed at the highest level around the country, Lowan.
Sure. Would you like me to carry?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who was his best? Tell us about that.
Sure. I think probably any trainer will tell you that this was my best horse, or this could have been my best horse.
Yes.
But if I have to sum it up, I would say his best performed horse was a horse called Amaponda. It was a stunning chestnut horse by Model Man out of it was out of an Argosy mare. He bought him for 23,000 rand, which I suppose back then was still a fair amount of money. And Mohammed was never really afforded the luxury of having buying power.
Yes.
It took him, I think, 6 months to sell Amaponda.
Sure.
And he ended up a very, very decent horse. I won't say he was a champion.
He
was a
won
top
the,
horse.
He won the champion stakes at Grable,
He won 8 races and all, but I know I'm biased again, but he raced an incredibly strong crop. 2 and 3 olds. Would you like me to name a few of them?
Please.
And I was very fortunate to be there in the 95 August Guineas, which was run at Milnerton back there. I was just out of school, so I went down to join the army, and I spent a bit of time with them before then I was going to come back and start working. Special Preview was favourite.
Sure.
Champion. Well, I'm sure Joe Seymour would probably tell you the best horse he's ever trained. Could sprint and went up to a mile. National Emblem.
Yeah.
Top horse. I mean, probably the most beautiful horse you've ever seen. Bushman Land, Western Rocket. There was a filly, Shepherd's Moon, Morisco. Le Fabulous goes on to win the Met.
In the Met, yeah.
The list goes on and on. If you go watch back and watch the 95 August Guineas, it was one hell of a field. And he was stiff not to win it. Mace was riding him. We were drawn 16 out of 16. Bushman Land won it. I think he was drawn 15, or we were drawn 16, or the other way around. But at that stage, Amaponda was an arrogant horse. You couldn't always tell him what to do. He would do what he wanted to do. You know? So a bit stiff. He turns for home stone last, with Mace on, and the wind is howling. Any Cape Towners would know. When it blew at Milnerton, you knew the wind was blowing. Anyway, cut a long story short, about 5-6 horses go across the line, and there's only about half a length in between them.
Sure.
Amaponda was flying up late on the outside with Mace on. Bushman Land held on to win it. But it was a hell of a field, a hell of a race. It was a hell of a time for us as a family. You know, being from, my dad was what you call a small trainer, such we didn't have huge numbers. But yeah, it was a nice ride for us. You know, he won a few feature races. He won his prep race going into that August Guineas. It was called the Premiers. Paul Denysschen, one of them. He slipped up down the inside. He just timed it perfectly. Yeah. Counter action was odds-on favourite. I think he won his first 2 or 3 starts. Yeah.
What was your first, just if we go back, because I mean you've been in Ashburton, you've been the mayor of Ashburton your whole life, and you've been there long before I even knew Ashburton existed. What was your first memory? And I'm asking it for a reason because I'm going to answer it too. What was your first memory of Paul Denysschen?
I remember he was helping you at the time, or you were helping him. I can't remember. And he took no nonsense. I remember he just, if you did wrong, he wound you up.
That's it.
Yeah.
Until the day he died, he wound me up. And
never
most of the time he was right.
Yeah, but when he was his health wasn't good, and he was fluking the doctors.
I remember, I'll never forget it, and it's a lovely memory. Driving up to Ashburton and getting into the parking lot and getting out the car, and from here to the cameras away were 2 gentlemen, one a little shorter and one much taller, with a big jacket on, smoking a cigarette, this thick set, firm, fair, but wonderful human being. And that was the first time I ever met your dad.
Okay.
And it was just from there it was wonderful. He was nice to everybody. He was, as you say, down the line. You knew where you stood. Had a strong handshake. If he gave you a clap, you'd know about it. But he was a no-nonsense man.
If you don't mind me getting back to you, with the question you asked about who was his best horse. Now, in that same year, at Ambaponda, he bought another horse, the same age, horse by the name of ABC. It was a big grey horse. He was 17 hands as a 2-year-old. Now, him at home, he could give Ambaponda 4 or 5 lengths on the sand track at Ashburton, turn for him and move up to him on the pit and say, right, let's have a go now. So my old man thought he could potentially have been the best horse he ever trained.
Okay.
But he unfortunately became a bad bleeder. And back then, obviously, even back then, he didn't quite have the medication we've got now. And we're probably still not on top of bleeding. And will we ever be? I'm not sure. But ABC, my dad being the way he was, he tried to line him up first time at Maritzburg. But he wasn't a guy who was hard on his horses. He would let the run bring them on. But he put 2 in the race at Scottsville, another horse called Northern Voyager. And he made the play for Northern Voyager. Ricky Kleinsmith was riding for the time. Everyone thought there was actually ended up having Martinez Mini on ABC just because I think he was available. And they backed ABC. And growing up, my dad wouldn't tell us, No. That was just the way
old school,
It was old school, but I had to figure it out for myself in life.
That was how, it was in those days. I mean, there was no television interviews and comments and all the rest
That's
of it.
right.
In
So
those days.
on the day, in the rings, this is to Martinez, just big soft horse, but he's got tons of ability. Just nurse him, sit him, 300, let him go, he'll win. Martinez sent him at the 500. He was massive horse. He just ran out of race condition, Needless to say, next time, takes him to Clearwood. Now, he's told the Cadets were his owners back then. They were Marpet, Multipet. They were wealthy guys, but they were tight, He says, right, whatever we put on last time, you've got to double up now. We've got to get our money back. He bumps a horse called Casey's Honor. With the late Michael Roberts, and he trained at Clearwood, So I mean, and he was a top trainer, Michael Roberts, good trainer. They put the money on Casey's Honor. ABC got up on the line to beat him.
Sure.
Yeah, so they got their money back. I mean, Casey's Honor went on to be a top sprinter. I think he won the computer form in Joburg. Good, not a big horse, little horse, but good run. ABC ended up only winning about 3 or 4. The bleeding just got the better of him.
ABC spelled literally
It was
ABC.
ABIE and then CEE.
Okay.
He was out of a mare called Apples of Gold. I'm not sure if Terry trained her or in his early career, or he then trained progeny of it as well.
Lowan, your family, you married to Caroline. Talk to us about your Caroline and your kids.
Caroline, yeah, she, sure, bless her. She's put up with me for 27 years now. I'd been to Zim a couple of times shortly after school, just for a holiday, because a couple of my other good mates, also from college, they would go up there. They played in a band just for fun, as their hobby. They'd go up there on working holidays and such, spend 3 months there, jam at night and just live a jaw. So I went and joined them a couple of times, went to Kariba and that type of thing. I fell in love with them. It was a great place. And in the time I spent the one holiday, I met Caroline through friends of friends up there and just took a fancy, I suppose. And we just stayed in contact. And one thing led to another. And eventually, when I finished my 4 years out of school, it was the end of 98, I finished my farrier apprenticeship down here. I decided, I was still young, I was probably only 21, I'm matriculated at 17. I wasn't fully ready to then commit to the racing industry as far as training goes. It was a hard regime. I mean, your old man wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, by 4 o'clock you're working. And so I made the decision to move up to Zim. My late mom dropped me in Maritzburg the one day to catch a bus. My bag full of my clothes, all my farrier tools, everything. And off I went to Zim. Moved in with Caroline, unbeknown to her parents. Strong Catholic upbringing. And I just started finding myself and found a few clients, shoeing, wives.
And then you got a job with Paul
I
Denysschen?
became friends with Paul Matchett.
Was it inevitable? So before you carry on with the journey to Paul Matchett, was it inevitable that you were always going to be involved in horses?
I always wanted to be a racehorse trainer. From a young boy, I'm one of 3. I've got a brother and a sister. They all know racing, understand racing, but couldn't lift up a horse's foot.
Okay.
But I mean, my brother knows form better than I do, knows racing as well as we do, can talk, can read a race, all that. But I'm the only actual one that went
physically with the horses.
Physically with the horses, because we weren't encouraged or pushed to. But Dad didn't want us involved.
Okay, so it was inevitable.
Probably right.
It was the best bet on the card.
But as you said earlier, once that bug gets you, it's in your blood.
But going back, sorry to interrupt you, going back to Paul Matchett, so you worked for Paul.
So I was shoeing a few horses for him. And I just liked the man. He's a likable guy, and doesn't say much, just gets on with his business. And then there was two other younger girls working for him. Now I've already been there for like a year and a half, and maybe even 2 years. One of the girls left him as his assistant. And I approached him and said, I'd like to come work for you. Can I work for you? Yeah, sure, no problem. So then I spent the last 3 years that I was in Zim actually as Paul's assistant. And like in the last year and a half I was with him, he was in the process of trying to relocate to Johannesburg, which he did. And myself and Robin McLeod then ran the show in Zim and carried on with the yard, didn't we? We still did okay, you know.
No, you was champion trainer in some of those
Yeah,
days,
I'm trying to think how many times towards the end.
Yeah.
Paul was always sort of on the log, there, right there, thereabouts.
Yeah.
But Tony Riley was powerful. And then Tony made the decision to leave Zim and went to New Zealand, I think.
Yeah.
And then Paul then took over a large portion of his yard as well. So the yard became bigger, some top horses, some last clients, and then he was powerful. You know.
Yeah.
And then we were competing with Nolene Peach, a couple of others. Yeah, Zim was great times. It was fun racing.
Yeah, it was fun.
There was obviously, the competition against each other and that, but then after races, we all drank together upstairs. It was
Talking
fantastic.
about that drank together upstairs, I went years ago when I was working for Winning Form. Dewey Williams was,
great man.
a great man, and I stayed with. And we actually had. I must try and find that photograph because we had a braai. Dewey Williams, Martin Ball, whom we were talking to this morning, and I was in Zim for I think 10 days. It was one of the greatest holidays. You talk about that. And Dewey Williams, and we raced, and we had racing, and then they said, "Well, let's go to the party." I said, "Well, where's the party?" They said, "Upstairs." It was one of the nicest jewels I've been to. Fun. Nobody, you were competitive on the race course. Everybody just ate and drank and partied together.
In the later years, we then started racing on a Sunday, and the party sometimes went on till 1 o'clock in the morning. Now you got to wake up Monday morning, and then sometimes we had to shoot the South African jockeys back to the airport first, and then get back to the yard quickly. So the wife wasn't always that happy. Monday morning you're still out.
Let's talk about something that I want all of us, and we've discussed it before we went live, or before we went on air, and we want to discuss it with the greatest respect, but a lot of trainers over the years sadly have given up, handed in their license. You went and trained, and we're going to talk just now a bit more about some of your good horses and winners and lovely betting coups that you've pulled off, but you've unfortunately had to stop. Why did you stop? I mean, we've lost Corinne Bestel. I'm just using it, there's names. Trainers have to give up and close doors. What's going on? Why did you stop?
Well, I don't think it comes down to one particular factor. I think there's a number of factors involved, which probably applies to all the guys that have given up. But kind of long story short, financially it wasn't working. And also being married to an accountant, I mean, she was telling me for years it's not working. And she used to tell me you're living in denial. And back then, you're a trainer, you're doing your thing. I would take offense. But you know what? She was right. As you get a bit older and wiser, you realize these things, And kind of long story short, it wasn't working financially. So you get to a point where that puts pressure on you in more ways than one.
Yes.
It's having grown up in it as well. I think it's the best job in the world, but it's a selfish job. It's a selfish industry from the point that you get up early in the morning, you go to work, you come home 5 or whatever. Sunday you're racing. During the week you're racing. You sacrifice a lot of other things. You're spending time with your child, with your wife. It does take its toll, So, look, COVID didn't help as well. Yeah. COVID didn't help most people, most businesses. I think that was kind of the final cherry on top, where I got to a point where I had to just make the call,
I'm glad that you mentioned that because the public, the people of racing, are sometimes quite hard on jockeys, trainers, etc. It is a tough job. We've spoken about jockeys. Yes, people say he did this wrong, she did that wrong, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day...
Backseat drivers.
At the end of the day, they've got a difficult, dangerous job. Yes, 100%. They get well compensated. We know all that. But at the end of the day, it's a dangerous job.
100%.
Trainer's life, as you said, you sacrifice. It's
more of a dangerous job financially.
Absolutely. So, and I think that the public must appreciate that because I think we all sometimes really sling off and get too,
100%.
Get too vicious.
Even I do it against the jockeys, but a lot of the time it's your frustration.
Sure.
Because you can see things going to happen, and then it happens. You think, why didn't you do that?
Yeah.
But it's easy sitting on the grandstand.
You stand on the grandstand, change your stick, change your stick.
But I've been watching racing since almost soon after TV came out in South Africa, and I'm a young boy watching. I can read a race, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. And Lowan, you talk about financially, bills need to get paid.
100%.
It's a business. Bills 100%. And money comes in, money comes out.
Unfortunately, I can only relate to this country as a trainer in this country, and I'm not knocking anything with industry because I love the game. I think trainers are on the back foot from the start. Theoretically, I think we should be paid 30 days up front, but paid up front for that first month. You're going to feed that horse, you're going to pay the groom, you're going to pay the wages, you're going to pay the bedding, you're going to pay this. There's so many hidden costs when it comes to a trainer running a yard and business that the average person's got no idea about. So we're taking the risk. You've taken the risk to start with to go buy that horse and sign for 21 days. Marge used to get on that phone for the TBA. You're under pressure. Yeah. So if that whole thing could change, it's one small change in the right direction where guys are paid, I think, paid up front. And they're more, from day one, they're more financially secure in that little situation where they're training that horse for that client. It takes the pressure off. Yeah. Trainers are permanently under pressure. I mean, I can see it even more now, watching from the outside, how guys look.
I think, isn't it in England, I know, is it like the Weatherby's, if you take out your colours for a horse or whatever, you got to pay 3 months keep in advance. And then the trainer puts in his invoice or something like that. And if it runs out, then the colours get
suspended or whatever. That's a good idea.
Well, here
can work.
Also, Dr. Club said, it's your problem, don't sue him.
No disrespect to anyone or any organisation or anything, but back in the day, I mean, when my dad started training, he couldn't get stables. He had to train at the back of Montclair, and outside stable, then walk his horses down to get into Clearwood. Eventually got into Clearwood, and eventually to Summerfeld. They were strict. You couldn't just get your colours. You filled in more forms than when you're applying for a bond. You couldn't. Being a racehorse owner was a well-to-do thing.
Yes, they checked your bank 100%.
account. And that's how it should be.
You can have one horse.
I believe so. The old days, the jockey club would tell you, based on your finances, you can have 10 horses, you can have 3, you can have 1, you can have none. They dictated.
But there were also scabengas. I mean, I remember the chairman of Scottsville, Bobby Norton. He was just drinking the same pub as us at lunchtime.
Bobby Norton room was there.
Yes, and he said to me one day in the pub, he said, Andrew, you can get you a horse, I said, this is Norton. He said, I haven't got any colours. He said, don't worry. He said, I'll organise that. I was like, okay. But I never got colours because I couldn't afford it.
Sure. It's an expensive game. It's the name Rich Man's, what's it? Rich Man's Hobby. It doesn't come from nowhere.
The debt, I mean, you over the years would have written off a lot of cash, written off a lot of money, which, as you say, it's not easy to take those blows. But
of course,
you've got to do it. What else can you do?
Sometimes you just have to and take the knock and move on. You're obviously chasing people for money and trying to go the legal route. Perhaps sometimes that just costs you more money, and you end up losing more.
But the thing is, it puts trainers under pressure. I mean, you like to buy bedding, and if you haven't got the cash, because most of the bedding suppliers want.
You've got to pay, absolutely. And you can't blame them.
No, you can't blame them because they're also swerving. So,
for sure.
And then the staffs come along, there's no bidding in there, what's going on? Jeez, guys couldn't afford it.
Another one, we're talking about trainers that have had to hand in the license. We mentioned Lorenzo Karim more recently. But, it's a business. If that owner... Say for argument's sake, Andrew Harrison and Warren Inferno owe you 100,000 Rand, and he's got a tyre business, I've got a bakery. You need the money. We wouldn't like that to happen to us. It's a circle. You've got to, and I'm sure that if one couldn't attend to the bills and they approached you and said, look, we can give you 500 Rand a month, but make it happen. But to have to write off.
Who was that ex-boxer who used to be a debt collector? Big, huge. Okay, I can't remember. He used to go around
to collect the cash.
Short, take baseball bet.
Where was that, Joburg?
TV. No, man.
That is before my time.
Jimmy Abbott.
Jimmy Abbott, he was a boxer.
Jimmy Abbott,
So
you don't like it, bang, your TV's gone. Cough up.
The recent sales, I want to leave talking about farrier work towards the end, but the recent sales, I was just chatting to Gavin Van Zyl off air while we were having our breakfast, and I was obviously present there. And
where, breakfast?
Both at the breakfast and at the sales, and a little active too, which was wonderful. So there was really enough.
Did you bid?
Purchased 2, but there was enough. Yes, no, I won the lotto last week, didn't I tell you?
I wouldn't be sitting here.
What was so nice is that there was a horse for all budgets. Hence, my type of budget was able to secure 2. The upper end, middle end, it really was a great sale. But wow, million after million after million. What was your take?
To be honest, I haven't studied all the results. I had a quick look at the first day results, and I just like to see. Obviously, I still got interest. I still talk to Paul Denysschen a lot. We became very close. See what he bought. He bought 6 horses. A couple of Eric the Reds. I see they're flying. He's stamping a beautiful horse.
Yeah, here they.
Doug bought 2. Obviously, my interest now doing Doug's farrier work now. He bought 2 nice colts. One of them an Eric the Red, tit of a colt. So yeah, I'm basically just following which is close to me now.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
Yeah. And obviously, Vercingetorix flying needs no introduction.
Yeah,
Top racehorse.
You've got to have a few pound and only buy
Top
one
stallion.
of them.
No, 100%.
Even if it's got skew legs, you still
For
pay.
sure. School leg doesn't stop them running.
Absolutely.
You're just trying to eliminate the factors that could work against you.
Yeah,
You know
for
what I
sure,
mean?
for sure. Just out of interest, talking about sales and you skew legs or whatever the case may be, what you look at a horse at the sales and would you let certain factors slide? I mean, and what would be a non-negotiable for you if a horse had a particular fault that you would say definitely not?
Sure. It's a tough, not a tough question, but it is a tough question.
What do you look for?
I think the first thing you look at for me when you're looking at a horse is when it walks out that box, it must grab you. Yeah. It's got to have a presence. It's got to have some kind of aura. It's got to resemble an athlete.
Remember that word, aura, we learned about?
1,000 orders.
Yeah, and obviously, depending on what budget you go to the sales with, there's a lot of horses you're not going to look at.
Sure.
A horse must, walk well. It must be supple. It must be athletic.
Yeah. But that sale there, I mean, Alistair Gordon, and then they've been through the select,
The process,
so you're only going to get a horse with serious defects anyway.
On nationals,
On nationals,
100%. And your later maturing also, maybe with a slight confirmation of defects, could be on your
next
on your next sale, 2-year-old sale, or maybe the Durban sale. Not that there's anything wrong with them.
No.
It's just the criteria that needs to be in place.
Yeah. And the funniest thing, we always say that there's no rules. Everyone's got entitled to their opinion, and you choose horses to gamble on, you choose horses to buy, all differently. And I'm not going to mention the lot, I'm not going to mention the farm, I'm not going to mention anybody. I'm just going to tell you there was a particular horse that myself and somebody else thought it was a 11 out of 10, beautiful, lovely, lovely horse. And we were having dinner that night, and there were 3 at the table. The one person said the most hideous horse they've ever seen. The other person said it's got terrible legs, and the other person said they wouldn't buy a horse like that. So it's just amazing how everybody's opinion is different. And then you might look at a horse that you think, not for me. Lowan thinks it's great.
Yeah, no, but I was watching a thing on Scarlet Lady that Michelle Wing did. She interviewed Alistair Gordon. Yeah. When Scarlet Lady arrived, I mean, he looked at her, he said, Jesus, I think I might just send her back with wherever she came from. Yeah. And look how good she was.
Top,
so
I can relate to that when I speak to Duncan. Obviously, I'm good friends with Duncan. I remember him telling me the day Via Africa arrived.
Yes.
He walked into I think she was actually in the paddock when he arrived. He took one look at what have they sent me.
Yeah.
And ended up an absolute freak.
Champion
filly.
Yeah.
I think she had one sort of offset knee or turned out on the one leg. She was probably quite narrow as a young horse, but she had athletic
and
ability.
now she's a bloody brilliant broodmare too.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, look at us. I mean, you show
Look at me, I turn out.
you turn out. You dish. You have bushy hair. I mean, you could write a good article.
He's got tough feet though. Make a farrier's job easy. Only man I've seen walk barefoot in Kimberley and Ashburton in the middle of winter.
No, let's not even go there, Lowan. Let's not even go there. Other than his dear wife. I mean, how she hasn't hoofed him out yet. I don't know. She's going to send you to buy new shoes.
She's trying. She says, I'll just show off. I said, well, yes. At least I'm saving on shoe leather.
There's lots of changes, Lowan, happening the changes have happened in Cape Town land, and there's a lot of changes now happening in KwaZulu-Natal land. What is your take? Hollywood, Greg Bortz, Owen Heifer, Zimbabwean family who I know you're close to. What are your thoughts?
Oh, look, Warren, I haven't looked too closely into all the happenings and whatever. I always, even before, try to stay out of all that. But sure, you've got to take your hat off to a man like Greg Bortz. I've unfortunately never met the man, but enjoy sitting and listening to his perspective on all sorts of things. Successful businessman. Thank goodness for most of us that his passion is horse racing. Along with Hollywood Bets, I mean, what they've achieved, what they've done, what they continue to try and achieve is sure. You've just got to respect that and appreciate that. And where would any of us be without them?
Yeah,
I think it would be a very sad state of affairs.
Yeah.
I think you would have very, very small field sizes. A couple of trainers racing against each other, I think. A similar situation to Zimbabwe, maybe not that bad yet,
Yes.
but possibly heading in that direction.
But what's so important, I'm glad that Lowan mentioned it, because the public must realise the impact. He's just said, if it wasn't for them, where would we be? Now, he is a farrier, whom we're going to elaborate on just now. Hollywood's activity with Greg Warts is affecting him in a positive way. I mean, and he's just, I'm not being derogatory.
100%.
You've got a small interest, a small job as a farrier, and there's hundreds and thousands of everybody else. So it makes, it does make a huge impact.
Of course it does.
And that's the magnitude of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you're looking at feed merchants, you're looking
Correct.
at farriers, you're
CEOs,
grooms,
to
jobs,
guys that are
grooms,
cutting the
jobs.
grass. It's
not
huge.
vets, because vets can look after dogs too.
It's huge. But talking about cutting the grass, I don't know, we either got to get this podcast's time slot moved, or we've got to ask the gentleman that cuts the grass to do it half an hour later. But nevertheless, now let's go. So that's your take on all the changes. We must now talk a lot about, you closed up, you stopped training. Were you always doing farrier work? And talk about your business, your current business.
Warren, if you don't mind me just taking it back a bit in time, obviously, like we've discussed previously, always wanted to be a racehorse trainer, but Dad never encouraged us, pushed us to get involved with horses or follow that, the horsey career or training career. But then, like halfway through high school, he kind of said to me, and I'd met his then farrier, a gentleman by the name of Mick Finnis.
Mick,
Yeah,
the legend.
and he's not a well man now.
Right.
We'd met him a couple of times and been down the coast with him and my dad, like fishing for a week, boys' weekend, that type of thing. And Mick asked me what I'd want to do when I finished. So I want to train horses. He also obviously knew how tough it was and whatever, and like we were kind of sitting around the table down the coast, and he said, "Why don't you come work for me when we finish school?" And my dad's kind of agreed and pushed the idea upon me that it'd be a great idea. Firstly, you're getting a trade behind you. Secondly, you're getting to work firsthand with and underneath the horse and learning about his feet, learning about his conformation, and just creating a whole better package as a horseman. So straight out of school, I started with him in '95 and did 4 years with under Mick and his son Dom Finnis, who's still showing strong as we speak. Some of the trainers that we shot for back then, he's still like Laf, been with Laf forever. I did 4 years under them. In KZN, obviously here, did Laf's work, we did the late Johnny McCready's, Roy War when he was training, Michael Roberts in Clearwood, Eileen Bistel.
Sure.
So yeah, I was in and around, and my dad, Bertie Hayden, Ashburton later. So I was in and around some top horsemen, and then I got to the end of 4 years, the end of '98. By that time I'd already been to Zim on holiday and whatever. I just got to a stage where I thought it's time for me to move on a bit in life and to find myself and go to the next step as such. Like I said earlier, I wasn't ready to commit to training yet in the racing industry from that point. So I then went up to Zim and then spent 5 years there shoeing, and then came back and then joined my father at Ashburton in 2003, as his assistant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Currently, who do you service? Who are your clients? What are you doing? How are you doing it?
When I stopped, I straight away, I'd really, to be honest, been doing a couple for Gary Rich at Ashburton because he was my neighbour, training neighbour for the last few years, and we got on well. So that time leading up to knowing I was going to close up, I approached him and said, would you be prepared to support me? And I can try and support you as well. I'm going to have a few horses looking for a home to carry on training, a few of my owners. So we kind of came to an agreement that I help you, help me. And that's where it started. I've got a lot of respect for Gary, a good man. Gary Rich, in racing under Gary Rich, Doug Campbell now since about August, September last year. And then I've got bits and pieces all over KZN,
Okay. So
Peaceville, Drummond, Howick, Hilton.
So you don't necessarily
not
have
just
to
thoroughbreds,
not
not
just
just
thoroughbreds,
thoroughbreds,
Hags, show jumpers, dressage,
Okay.
polo ponies. I go as far as Underberg once a month. Now Swartberg. I recently picked up some work in Swartberg. So trying to build a...
Fishing is good there.
I only tried quickly the one afternoon with Jack, but it was getting a bit cold and a bit late. Yeah, beautiful, isn't it?
It is.
Beautiful. I could move there tomorrow.
Lowan, you're a one-man show, is that right?
I have been, right up until a couple of weeks ago, for the first 3 years, now 3 and a bit, I've worked ace out. I had to do what I had to do. Couldn't afford the wages for anyone else. And you don't have enough work yet to warrant employing someone.
Yeah. So now, because that leads me to the question is, are you at your max? Are you at your capacity? Can you take more work?
Absolutely, yeah. Now I'm taking on another young black gentleman who works for another farrier, in fact. He's now too busy and also got, cut a long story short, you know that Robbie Dawson passed away recently.
Yes.
So the other farrier, Martin, took on a lot of his work and clients and staff, but I think just feeling the pinch a little bit with the wages and everything, it's too much for him to carry. So I kind of can't remember how it happened, but we've chatted and he's helped me, given me some of his work, which he's battling to get to and service properly because he's so busy. And I'm now taking one of his staff members on to help me.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. What do you trade under? Just
excuse me, LD Farrier Services.
LD Farrier Services. And do you have? If somebody wanted to get hold of you, social media? No,
I've kind of gone off Facebook. When I closed up shop, I just needed to take a bit of time out, and social media was never really my big thing.
Yes.
I got more negative things from it, to be honest, over the years.
Yeah.
So I've just taken it back. So I'm still on the cell phone number I've been on since 2003.
So basically, if your email or cell phone.
That's it, yeah.
That's it.
And I think it's horses and racing and whatever you're doing within the horse industry, I think it's something that's more word of mouth than anything. Yeah. It's this friend tells that friend, oh, he's doing a good job, or I'm happy with him. I think there's a lot of trust thing involved.
Yes.
It's not something you're selling a product, you advertise it on Facebook, and boom, we're buying this at this special price. It's a unique thing, I think.
Yeah. How true and how what's the word I'm looking for? Serious is the comment that goes around. I don't know if the exact wording, but no foot or no hoof equals no horse. I mean, is that?
I think it's very, very, very true and 100% so. You got that big animal landing on at any one time when it's galloping or walking 1 foot at a time. You got that 400-500 kilos landing on that foot, which is actually quite a
statistic.
I think a horse is a badly designed animal in some ways. That it's landing on that foot supported by a bone inside, and then the bones, like the cannon bone or whatever, is often thin and it's supporting all that weight and the galloping machine.
Yeah,
so that
amazing.
Things go wrong, they go wrong properly.
Yeah, because if you look at the finishes of photo finishes,
you see that.
You see how the reflex.
That joint, that pastern is actually flat on the ground. Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. They're incredible creatures.
Stand up, yeah.
And horses can adapt to their problems and their aches and pains. They might just take a little bit more weight here, just here, but eventually something will give.
Yeah. Don't tell me about that. Everything is giving in our string at the moment. Everything is giving.
I think it's being a trainer and whatever. It's all got its challenges, eh? Yeah. And then you have the weather we've had for the last 3 months, probably.
Yeah.
I can imagine trainers are pulling their hairs out because farriers are pulling their hairs out as well.
Yeah. Well, you'll hear in the interviews that I did this morning for we call it the USO show, but you know what I mean, the Gallop TV preview show. Everybody can't gallop, only restricted to gallops, rain, etc. But that's another thing you talk about social media. You read on there that the operators need to fix it up. The operators, can't believe there's no racing. I mean, the operators don't govern the weather.
Yeah, but you look at that Gold Circle press release again. We've had the entire year's rainfall in 4 months.
Absolutely.
Gary, he actually said you're a nice bloke.
No, that's why we're going to delete that from this podcast. We're going to delete that part where he says, Gary. Lovely that Brett Van Loon too has walked into the breakfast room. Command Stud and of course Gary Rich.
I think they planned this.
They could have planned it. They've come to buy you breakfast, but we've already bought you breakfast. Back to no feet, no hoof, no horse. When you're working around these beautiful, majestic animals that you say, tongue-in-cheek, they're not greatly designed, you've got to be calm. You seem to have that kind of chilled, you're a chill guy.
I am.
I think you need to be.
Yeah, I'm generally a chill guy. I think I'm relaxed. There's certain factors in life and business things along the way. Maybe you do get a bit uptight at times.
Sure.
I think I got my mom's temperament more. She was more chilled. My dad had a short fuse, yeah. He loved the rule in his early days.
Yeah.
Wasn't never scared to put his fists up, I'm not a fighter.
Lowan, you mentioned it to us when we were enjoying our breakfasts, and of course, as I say always, the clubhouse at Summerveld, if you haven't been up here for breakfast, it is open to the public and it's just a wonderful venue. The view, you sit here, Zane argued with me, you sit here, you look at the tracks, you look at the rings where the horses are, you look further down and right through to the ocean. I mean, that is spectacular. I don't know if Apiwe's camera can zoom in and get that image, but if it can, I want him to post it up because it's a view second to none. Horses, it's just wonderful. But you were saying to us when we were eating our eggs that betting coups, punting, as it was in those days, that was the game. I mean, that was the, some people say, oh, well, yeah, things have changed now. Transparency's there, videos are there to be seen, replays. That's now. But going back all those years, that was the Denysschen game, to line them up.
Yeah, I think my dad was pretty good at that. He was a guy that survived on his wits a lot of the time over the year, but he came to his horses and his business and his thing. It was I'm sure he wasn't the only one. It was a very racing, and it was a very private thing back then. The information and the things you saw and did, it was very much between you and your clients.
Yes.
And especially more so if they were a betting type of client, where you wanted to protect them. You wanted to protect potentially their betting price, which is the only way, and always been the only way, to possibly get back some money quickly. Well, not that it's quickly, because you waited and you prepared it, also possibly over a year.
Yes.
But on that day, if you can get a good price and your owner can get his money back, or a large sum of it, they think they've won the July.
Yeah.
And there's no better feeling to it, and that still not for me.
No.
When people say to me, what is your thrill in life? Horse racing is my thrill.
Yeah.
And when you pull off a betting coup, you've perhaps bought that horse as a youngster, you've encountered some problems along the way, and you pull off that betting coup, and you've kept it quiet, and you win that at a big price. I'm glad Brett walked in, because we did it a few times together. We rode them from the screen from the 400.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll never forget at Hollywood Bets Gravel, it was, I think, a night meeting. It was one of Brett's horses, and I heard you from the studio, and you came to do the interview, and I think he hissed the whole way through the interview, because all he could hear, the voice was gone.
That, along with maybe a couple of whiskies, and the emotion and the passion. It could have been high green if it was a night meeting. Yeah.
Probably high green.
He won the last race of a night meeting.
Not
on Friday,
Lance Pagel?
Lance Swim, and I kept it quiet. Brett and I, we gave him 2 prep runs. And then we had a go that night. It was 1800 on the folly with Lance Pagel on, because he was riding for me.
Yes.
This is another thing I could go into is teamwork.
Yes.
Where I get very frustrated with these young jockeys and that these days, and like Pops as well, growing up in the industry. Jockeys and trainers had relationships along the way. They built a relationship with the trainer and the horses that they're working. They knew those horses back then. Yes. I can remember from a youngster. Oh, I'll tell you a quick story. I was at Ashburton one day, and I used to frustrate trainers, and jockeys would come along, these young guys who were becoming successful, got a bit of money, driving a nice car, and you're sweating there, struggling to work your horses, get your horses exercise, and they're sitting in their car, in their GTI or whatever they got. And no disrespect to anyone who has a value. They won't come and help you. I say, you're not giving me any rides. You, my friend, are a professional athlete.
Yes.
Who's got a ride in that race on next Wednesday or next Saturday, whatever. You need to be at your peak fitness and your peak. You don't. Kevin Lorena doesn't jump into a boxing ring, fighting for a world title fight, sitting on his bum watching another spar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've got to be your sportsman. You've got to be at your
Peak.
peak.
Yeah,
I remember as a youngster, Freddie McCaskill. In his day, I saw him take off his shirt the one day. He was ripped like a boxer. He had a 12-pack. In his day, Freddie was a master. When he put his money down, he didn't get beat. But he was fit. He knew his game. He knew his horses. He knew his trainers was right. I'm just using him as one example. There's many of those guys.
Sure.
That era of those type of Carl Nisius, Freddie McCaskill, Garth Puller.
Sure.
I'll talk about Robbie Hill. Those guys are masters of their trade. Whatever you thought of them, or maybe the race didn't go according to plan on the day. But believe me, those guys, like Andrew Fortune, come back now.
Yeah.
The guy's got a God-given gift.
Yeah.
Horses run for him.
Absolutely.
He hardly moves in the saddle.
Absolutely.
He just plays with them.
Yeah.
Did you watch that Nelson? Was it Nelson?
Nelson Bay.
Nelson Bay. Did you watch him ride at sea?
Yeah, for Grand Cornwall.
Yes, correct. The colours that you've raised.
Sat.
Yeah. He knew what he's. Look, there might not have been a hell of a lot left. But he
there
was
enough. There was
trying,
enough. There was enough.
And unfortunately, and no disrespect, the youngsters today don't have that.
No.
They don't know. They don't have that. Paul Denysschen could turn for him, start last at Kenilworth, and get up a half a length schmatzi, because he knew what he had. Absolute master.
Kevin Shea's told
Kevin,
us
another
many
guy.
stories. Yeah, it's apparently it's about knowing, as you just said, knowing what you've got underneath you. You know.
But you're not going to know what you got underneath you if you don't ride work. I mean,
I'll get back to this jockey. Off the top of it, but I'm not off. This jockey, I won't mention his name. He's become a successful jockey and a great guy. Good boy, good rider. I was frustrated. I walked a bit close to his car. I was watching horse work and I said, sorry, boy, do you know who won the July in 1985? I had no idea. Obviously, it's before he's born, but so I'll tell you what. It was also called Gondolier, training with Pack and Tom, written by Billy Harvey. Old man Billy Harvey were like this. He rode his first winner from 1984. And I remember my dad telling me from a couple of months before the July, that year when he won, he'd be standing there watching his horses work, and Billy would canter past him on Gondolier and say, shit in, Paulie. Why? Because he was forming a relationship with that horse and that trainer, all leading towards the product, the Durban July. And I can still remember the commentary in 1980. Gondolier and Billy Harvey saluting by 2. Go look it up, I bet you I'm right. He formed a relationship with that horse. Because I think Gondolier had really run in the July a couple of times. But that year, Billy Harvey prepared that horse with Pat and Thomas. And they won the July.
Now, you know, Andrew, what's your name again? Lowan talks about Gondolier and racing families. We're talking about the Denysschen family. Eric Anton, Pat's son, is still very much passionate and involved. He comes to the races fairly regularly, youngster who loves the game. And funnily enough, I often see Pat, who is very old now, but still in good shape, with his wife at the resident church that they go to, near Gravel Racecourse. So they certainly are fitting well, thank goodness. But you know, you mentioned about, and we bumped into Louis this morning. Louis Goosen's done a big drive at the academy with those 2 words, you know, Goya.
I wasn't aware.
Goya and Soya. He's given them a lot of coaching. Goya means stands for get off your. And then
As you Aga.
Yeah, as you Aga, yeah. Get off your as you Aga.
It wasn't a bad horse, As you Aga. Do you remember? I think Corinne or Eileen trained him.
Eileen Tracy.
And then, he rather get off your as you Aga than Soya, than sit on your as you Aga. And remember that Keris Teaton told us in his podcast that you sit on the couch, you're out.
Yeah.
Get off the couch and do some Goya, you're in.
Yeah.
100%.
Lowan, yeah, we could sit and talk for hours and hours, but just lovely to touch base and hear some stories, and glad that you're still in the industry and that you're loving it, and for all your hard work, you know, shoeing the horses, and may your business and may your family and may just everything go from strength to strength, because you're quite right, it's a beautiful game, although we get frustrated, you know, one out the pick 6, short head second,
Story of a life.
but we still come back and we come back for more. But thank you, and it's been lovely chatting.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lon. How's Jack, by the way?
He's good, eh? He's just turned 15 in January.
15.
Grade 9, yeah. Standard 7 as we knew it, yeah. Knows everything. But these lighties are sharp these days, eh? Hey? When it comes to computers and everything. I've got a promise to sort it out. No
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about Gary, you know, he had his grandchild who's, I don't know how old she is, 10 or 9 or 11, I don't know, I'm not sure how old she is. I know she's born on the same day as me. Operating on the cell phone, sending WhatsApps, checking things, doing emails.
Next level.
Very much.
Well, he's well, thanks. He's doing well at school. Knocks a bit, yeah. Got his mum's brains, thank God.
Well, please send our very best to Caroline and the whole family. That's a wrap. This weather changed, although there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was beautiful blue skies, and you can see all those clouds coming in from over the sea.
That's winter.
Is that winter? Okay, it is a bit fresh. But nevertheless, thanks to everybody. Punt well, be safe, and thanks to Lowan and to everybody concerned. Just one last thing, you must check up on our social medias that you're going to follow, like, subscribe, and do all those things. There will be a video released in the next 24, 48 hours. By the time you see this, it probably will have been released on all the construction work that's coming up at Hollywood Beds Gravel to make that venue even better for you, the valued punter. That's it. Be safe, be kind, and as always, we will see you in the number 1 box.